There are a ton of great ways to make money on Amazon, but today we're going to talk about how you can build a sustainable business and diversify it for long-term growth.
This is the Amazon Seller Podcast, hosted by multi-million-dollar Amazon sellers helping you launch your private label business to the next level. Find us on amazingfreedom.com or subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and YouTube.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast. My name is Nathan, and I'm here with Andy Slamans and Leron Hirschkorn. And today we're going to be talking about how you can diversify your Amazon business for long-term success. But before we get into that, I just want to mention that we have a couple of awesome free training videos that are available, but only for a limited time. If you go to amazingfreedom.com/training, you can check out our videos that go through product research, how to bring products to the Amazon marketplace, how to dig into the niches in Amazon, and how you can use our triple threat approach to dominate the Amazon marketplace. So make sure you check out those videos. It's at amazingfreedom.com/training. All right, so today we're going to talk about diversifying your Amazon business and really choosing your Amazon business model. For those who are listening, most of our listeners, I think, are familiar that there's a variety of ways that you can make money on Amazon, right? It's not just selling your own branded products of private label products, which for us is what we talk about on the show almost every episode, because that's what we are actively doing in our own businesses. But for many of those who are listening, maybe you listening, you might not be selling your own private label products right now. You might be selling other brands of products, either through what we call retail arbitrage, which means you buy products in store and sell them for a profit on Amazon, or online arbitrage, buying from online retailers to sell on Amazon, or you might be doing wholesale, or even thrifting, buying from thrift stores and garage sales, or even drop shipping your products, which there's some forms of drop shipping which are allowed on Amazon, like drop shipping from a manufacturer or a wholesaler, or there's some forms of drop shipping which are against TOS, drop shipping from other online retailers, but some people still do that anyways. So there's a variety of forms or business models that you could pursue on Amazon. So today what we want to do is talk about those different models, kind of the pros and cons of each of those models, and why we personally chose private label for our own business, and then just what you could do to maybe scale from those other models up into private label. So Andy, I want to start with you because I think you've tried or done most of these business models, maybe not drop shipping ever, but you've done most of these business models. Can you kind of just go through what your experience has been with the variety of models that are available on Amazon, and why you eventually kind of settled or have gotten to private label in your own business?
Sure. So this is kind of a typical progression, I think, or at least what I've seen in the 4 years that I've been an Amazon seller. When I first started, I started selling books around my house. We all know that Amazon started as a book-based business. That's how the owner, Jeff Bezos, that was the first thing that he started shipping. He wants to become the everything store. And so now they sell everything. So I started selling books around my house, started going to thrift stores and purchasing books there that were profitable, as well as other items that were new. A lot of times people will donate brand new products to thrift stores. So I was selling those. Eventually I moved into big box stores like Walmart or Target. So I would go there, and they have devices that you can scan. It'll bring up what the price is on Amazon. So I started doing that. They call that retail arbitrage. Very successful at that. There are name brand items. Generally, name brand items sell really well. You don't have to create listings. Listings are already created on Amazon. Then did a little bit of wholesale. This wholesale for some sellers, again, is great. It wasn't my particular cup of tea. In order to do wholesale effectively, you have to have really high sales velocity. The margins are a little smaller. And then I eventually progressed to what we all do now, which is private label. And the reason why I chose private label is I saw that kind of as a long-term game. Sometimes on Amazon, when you're selling brands, you could face some hurdles. And so some of the hurdles when you're selling name brands could actually contact Amazon and can restrict sellers from selling their brand. And so actually just the last couple of days, Nike sent out a bunch of emails to various sellers, basically saying if you have these certain ASINs, certain products, right, of theirs, that you have to sell through by July 13th. And so just like all business models, and we'll probably talk a little bit about maybe some of the risk or dangers, right, of private label, of what we do. But one of the dangers of risk of doing RA or selling other people's brands is you're really not the owner. And so you don't have full control. And I just saw building my own brand as giving me the most control that I can over my product. And that's really what I wanted. And that's why I did private label.
Okay, so let's talk about, some of those other business models and why they're so great for a lot of people when they're first starting, right? Like retail arbitrage or selling other branded products, not even just wholesale, but, retail or online arbitrage is really good for people who, maybe aren't confident with Amazon or don't have the capital or cash flow necessarily to produce and import and bring over their own private label products, right? So, Liran, I'll head over to you. Why did you start the way that you did on Amazon? Was it just because of what you stumbled onto with Amazon, or was it because that you felt that retail arbitrage was kind of the best thing for you in your particular situation at the time?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Before I started with Amazon in the first place, I had an insurance business, but then I also, had like a Shopify store that I started like as a side business, and it was really drop shipping, but drop shipping direct from wholesalers that I reached out to, like the companies directly, brands, and I had a Shopify store. They would send those products directly to customers. The margins weren't great. And so I was looking to change up. And actually, before I got into Amazon, I think I did go on Alibaba, and I didn't even know it was called private labeling at the time. But I went on Alibaba, and the product that I had were these kids' balance bikes. And so balance bikes allow kids to learn how to like ride a bike. It has no pedals, and it kind of teaches you to balance before you get a bike without any training wheels. You don't need training wheels after a balance bike. So the point is, I looked to actually make this product, and it was going to be quite expensive, like to produce. Like for me at the time, I think it was going to be like at least $5,000 to put into it, plus the shipping. And I really had no clue. And my plan was just to sell it on the website. I already had traffic and ads and stuff, but instead of selling somebody else's product, I wanted to sell mine. And so I never ended up doing it because I just wasn't confident that I kind of knew what I was doing about actually manufacturing a product. But I remember this like Skype video I had with the supplier who actually like showed me the bike on the video and stuff. And so I didn't actually do it because I just didn't have the confidence that I really knew what I was doing. It wasn't so much the capital, but it was just not knowing what I was doing. So then I stumbled on FBA, and I kind of stumbled on retail arbitrage by finding like Chris Green's book. And so that's really how I started. I didn't really know private label so much like as a business model, even though like I kind of like thought about it, but didn't really know that was kind of like a model. And I started that way. And I think retail arbitrage is one of the best ways to learn the Amazon system, because you can literally, like, I had this store in my region called Amazing Savings. They kind of sold like closeout type of, like closeout toys, stuff like that. They sold really cheap prices, and I would go there and buy like Hasbro products and sell them on Amazon. And, I could go and spend, $500, $1,000 and had very little risk, right? Like you learn about the sales rank and, how many sellers there are. And so it's a really great way to learn Amazon. So that's really how I started. And then after that, I realized that if I really wanted to scale my business, I really, I should look into wholesale, right? And I should look into like buying stuff from brands. And I started going to trade shows, and I was looking to bring some branded products and into Amazon that weren't on there, saying, hey, I'll be the only one in the buy box and I'll get this stuff. But I just realized that these companies were importing stuff from China, and that I could do that myself. I don't really need to like bring these products to Amazon and have other sellers jump on them. And so I moved to private label. But I think starting out, retail arbitrage is a good way to learn the whole Amazon system. Long term for me, I didn't think that it was sort of a sustainable model, just because ultimately I didn't have shoppers or anything going out for me. So it was me going out like 3-4 days a week, spending a lot of time in stores. and there was only so much I could do on my own. And at the same time, more brands started getting restrictions, and I saw the future, not that bright for that model. And so I decided, okay, and I kind of knew about private label, and I was kind of learning. I actually joined Andy's course, and I said, after getting 2 inauthentic claims on some shoes, I just decided to stop it right there and just focus all out on private label. And, one of the things that I think we were having a conversation earlier this week was that there are sort of two things, fear or greed, or you can say pleasure or pain, that drive all human behavior. And for me, it was that fear that really drove me to say, hey, I need to pause what I'm doing, because this model is not really what if I get another inauthentic claim and then, it gets suspended, and then this brand is not, I'm putting all my eggs in this, other people's brands. I need to change my model. And so for me, it was a wake up call to say, hey, you need to really change your model and go into private label. And, I'm really happy I did, because with private label, even though, most of my business is on Amazon, there's tons of opportunity to do stuff off Amazon when you have your own brand.
It's funny that you say that about the pain and the pleasure, and how sometimes, when you go through hard circumstances, it causes you to shift, right? When I first started private labeling, I think I've shared this story before on the podcast, I was actually wholesaling another person's brand, right? And they were actually from China. And so I was selling underneath their brand name. And a very good seller. It was my best-selling product. Well, that brand owner then came to me. They themselves wanted to sell on Amazon. And so they said, hey, Andy, we appreciate, the business that we've been able to do with you. However, we're going to start selling on Amazon ourselves. And so we are not going to allow you to sell our product any longer. And that was actually what pushed me then into creating my own listing, and then having to make a logo, having to come up with a brand name, having to trademark a name. So it wasn't I was actively looking to private label. It was I kind of got pushed into it. And then I saw the potential, when I did create that brand and started selling. And actually, the funny story is that a product is actually number 1, 2, and 3 in search for the main keywords. And I can remember talking to that manufacturer and saying, hey, look, are you sure you don't want me to sell your brand? Because he said that he would white label it for me. So I actually was buying the product from him. He would put my brand on it. I said, if you do that, I'm going to be competing with you then on Amazon, right? I was trying to talk him out of, kicking me off his brand, but it ended up being the best thing in the world for me.
Right. So again, we're talking about diversifying your Amazon business model, right? Everything we've been talking about here. And I just want to say real quick, I know, Liran, you come from a finance background before your Amazon life. I do as well, before my Amazon life, and as I was starting Amazon, I guess, as well. And I know for me, in the finance world, the number one thing that they talk about all the time, if you hear financial advisors talk about investment stuff, is the number one word you always hear is diversification, right? And so diversifying your stock portfolio or your investment portfolio is important. And in a similar way, kind of diversifying your business model can be important as well. Now, it doesn't apply in exactly the same way, because sometimes really focusing in on what you're good at and what works for you can be beneficial, but there's a lot of truth to not putting all of your eggs in one basket, or not having the option to pivot if you need to, right? And I think that's a big thing for us. It doesn't mean that you can't hit hard what you're good at, but you really should be able to pivot if you need to, right? You should have the option to be able to pivot if something happens, if you really need to. And so, Andy, I do want to ask you real quick, what people that are currently doing business models that rely on other branded products, maybe retail arbitrage or online or other forms of selling that require using other brands, what would be your advice to those people if you were going to tell them how to diversify their business model?
Yeah, so, I often tell people, if you're strapped for capital, generally just starting out, you doing RA with name brand products is a good way, right, to be able to generate some capital. And so, my advice always to people is, if what you're doing is successful, right, you want to keep doing that. However, you want to take 20% of your time, maybe, or 25%, or 15%, whatever it is. But you need to start identifying other ways, other sourcing models to add into what you are doing. And so if that means maybe you create systems or processes, maybe you need to hire shoppers, that can shop for you. Whatever you got to do to free up your time in order to start looking at other models, they're going to begin to generate revenue. That's what you have to do. You don't want to necessarily go all in on one model.
And what I wanted to add is that there are a lot of different business models that you can do, and the point is that you want to diversify because so let's talk about an example, right? Sometimes I see in groups people posting something like talking about wholesale and saying, oh, I spoke to this company. They're very like old school. They don't know anything about selling online. Like they just they're thrilled that I want to sell their products on Amazon. But then you have to ask yourself, what's going to happen as millennials start working for these companies, right? What's the first thing they're going to tell these companies to do? Hey, you need to sell on Amazon, right? And I see the future of more of these brands selling directly on Amazon, and kind of like that, the story that Andy, you were talking about with this brand that came to you and said, hey, sorry, get off the listing. We want to sell directly on Amazon. Don't sell our product anymore. I see that as a future trend. I mean, I think there's plenty of opportunities in wholesale and plenty of companies that don't want to deal with Amazon or sell direct to Amazon, and are just happy to wholesale you a high volume of product because that's their model. But I also see risk in that model with brands potentially wanting to sell on their own, which is why even if you're in wholesale, you want to diversify with the number of brands that you carry, right? You don't want to have like one brand be, for you, Andy, like if that one brand was like 80 or 90% of your business and suddenly you take that away, you don't want to be in that position. So whatever business model you're choosing, you need to diversify around that. So if it's retail arbitrage, well, there could be brand restrictions. You want to get into things like maybe merch by Amazon or get into wholesale or private label. If you're only doing private label, Amazon is the best place to jumpstart and launch your business. But when you might get to a point a year or 2 or 3 after being on Amazon where you say, okay, I need to start selling through my own website. I need to build an email list. I need to try to get into some small specialty stores or retail or whatever it is to try to minimize your risk. I think every model on Amazon has risk, right? Because ultimately you're in somebody else's platform.
So let's talk about that a little more. And before we do, I want to add another story. We were recently at the Rocky Mountain Reseller Conference in Denver a couple weeks ago now, and I too was talking to a guy there who was selling on Amazon and was a big wholesaler, sells a good amount of products on Amazon, and they were expressing to me some of the frustration that they were having. Again, not to say anything bad about wholesale because there's tons of opportunities. We know a lot of people making super good money with wholesale, but this person, one case of why you want to diversify, like we're talking about, had worked with a wholesaler really hard to get their product listing page, this wholesaler listing page, ranked up in search. They put a lot of time changing the title and the bullets and the pictures. And for about 6 months or a year, I can't remember how long, they spent a lot of time helping this product to do better on Amazon, right? And then all of a sudden the wholesaler comes to them and says, hey, we want to just sell this product ourselves, because they were already selling before on Amazon and now they're not selling anymore. And why was that? Because the wholesaler was selling merchant fulfilled, right? And the new seller, the seller I was talking to at the conference, was selling FBA. And he told them, hey, you guys, really should sell FBA with me and we can share the buy box, right? And they were like, oh, we don't need FBA. Who needs FBA, right? We'll just price the product the same as your product is. Well, for most of us to know that FBA sellers get the buy box preference over merchant fulfilled sellers, right? So it's obvious to us that a product or two different sellers that are competing for the buy box, the FBA seller is much more likely to get that buy box if they are at the same selling price. So this person was expressing me their frustration because they tried to work with this wholesaler, tell them, almost taught them how to sell on Amazon and the benefits. And then the wholesaler kind of said they didn't want to at first, but then once they saw the seller's success, they decided that they want to sell FBA on Amazon, and they're kind of pushing this guy out. So that's just to kind of echo what you were saying about diversifying your business model.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, any business model has risk. When you're relying on Amazon, we just think, private label has the least amount of risk, because as the brand owner, you're more in control. You're in control of your manufacturing. You're in control of your, getting your products into Amazon. You're in control of your pricing. You're in control of the buy box. You just have a lot more control than other business models. But we know that there's risk in every business model. And, the point of this conversation is to get you thinking about, asking yourself, what is my current business model on Amazon? Or writing this down, right? And what are my current risks, right? You have pros and cons to your business model. And what are my current risks? And where do I want to be in the future with Amazon? And what steps am I taking today in order to prepare for what the possible risks are in my business? So for me, it was, I'm only on Amazon. What risks do I have? And what can I do? Well, I can start my own website, and that's something I've done. Or, I can try to get into retail, and something I'm working on. Or something like doing licensing deals, which I'm currently working on. So it's a matter of what are the risks in my business, and what steps am I taking to minimize those risks? I think in business, you're always going to have risks. I was giving a proposal this week for a licensing deal with a major brand, and I have to give them certain minimum guarantees of how much royalties I'm going to pay them over 3 years. And man, some of those royalties are pretty high, but it's a great opportunity. It could be an opportunity that I shouldn't pass by. And so, there's a lot of risk in that, but, it's also minimizing my overall risk with Amazon if it's a brand that I can take into retail. And so, business is going to have risks no matter what. But the question you need to ask yourself is, how do I minimize the risks I have in my current model?
And Leron, what would you tell someone who was worried that, you're kind of trying to diversify your business model, try new things. And that's what it comes down to, right? You're trying new things, because if you're diversifying, if you're trying to look towards the future and grow, in order to do that, you have to try new things, which can be scary for us, right? So what would you tell those who are listening who say, hey, I'm just not sure. I'm kind of scared that I'm going to try to do this new thing to help my business long term, but it's not going to work out. What would kind of be your advice in that situation? And looking at yourself, what if this licensing deal doesn't work out for you, or getting into retail? What if that doesn't work out? What are you kind of telling yourself, and what would you tell others listening?
So in my mind, if you haven't tried, you've already failed, right? I mean, like, what's your risk today by not trying, right? Your risk is that you're going to be in the same position that you're in now, or possibly worse if you're in a business model that has more risks on Amazon. So the question is not so much, what is my risk if I try? The question is, what is my risk if I don't try? Right? Because where's your business going to be in a year or two if you passed up like an amazing opportunity to grow your brand? So ultimately for me with this licensing deal, I have, there's potentially a lot on the line, because I have to guarantee certain royalties that are going to be paid to the company. And so what I know I need to do is hustle like crazy, make money off this deal. And ultimately, I'm not going to lose all the money. And ultimately, if the deal doesn't work out for me in a positive way, I'm not going to lose all that money, because I'm still going to generate sales. I'm still going to generate royalties. It just may end up being that it's not so profitable, or it may result in a loss for me. But, the things I ask myself are not what if it doesn't work, but what if it does work, and I think our mind forces us a lot of times to ask the fear-based questions instead of asking the other side of the questions, right? What if it works out amazingly well? And then I think when you start thinking like that, then you start kind of moving towards those things, as opposed to moving towards the things that are not going to work for your business. So yeah, have a strategy in place on how to make sure that it does work. And if it doesn't work, I still have other sources of income in my business model where I can offset potential losses. But the question I think you should ask yourself is not what if it doesn't work. Ask yourself, what if it does work, and what is the risk to my current business model, and what if I don't take this opportunity, or what if I don't make changes to my business? Like, what are my potential risks then? There's risks no matter what. Like, not doing anything is a risk, right? You have to realize that a lot of, if you have a business model that's highly at risk with Amazon right now, then you're doing something by not doing something, right? You're staying where you are, which is a major risk. And so you want to take that into account also, that either way, whatever business you're doing, you have risk, and it's how do I minimize that risk, and what steps am I taking today to minimize my risk and to grow my business in the future, rely less on one business model, or rely less on just Amazon, and move my business and growth forward.
Awesome. So I think that gives us a good look at why it's so important to diversify your business, and, you know, really the importance of looking at all the different business or models that are on Amazon, the opportunities that we have. And that's what we try to hit here every week, right, guys, is the opportunities that we have as Amazon sellers, and why we think it's so important to take advantage of these opportunities. No matter what selling model you're doing, we think they're all great. We just think that there's benefits in diversifying and looking towards long-term growth. So I do want to take this time to also talk about a really cool opportunity that we have for all of our listeners and everyone in our community right now. It's a free training that we have spent a lot of time working on putting together. We have a lot of great content into it. It's a 4-part series. Video 1 came out last week, Thursday, and video 2 came out just today, depending on when you're listening to this, but just today during the release of this podcast episode. So Andy, can you kind of just go over what the first video is, brief for our listeners, what that first video is about and why you think it's so important?
Sure. So I tell people all the time, I'm so thankful and grateful when I first got started in the Amazon business for folks who put out content on how to sell on Amazon. And I think that the three of us, and one of the reasons why we do this podcast, is we're all appreciative of the folks who gave us great content when we started. And so that's what we're trying to do. This first video, we talk about product selection. Probably the most important piece when you begin to private label is you have to know how to pick good products. And so we're going to share in this first video our exact method on how we've been able to pick products. I've shared before, I have 2 products now that they each sell over $1 million a year on Amazon. So they're really successful products. And I think that the 3 of us have become really skilled at picking, you know, decent products on Amazon, very confident that products that we pick are going to sell. And so that's what we're going to share in this first video. I think people are going to really like it. They're going to get some insight, again, on how to pick good private label products.
Not only have we gotten pretty good at seeing winners, we think, of course, maybe we're biased, but we think we're pretty good at it. We're also pretty good at identifying losers, right? And that almost is just as important of a skill, maybe not as valuable, but it's pretty important to be able to look at a product. And a lot of times, just within 5-10 seconds of looking at a product, we can say, nope. Maybe because of our experience, we've either looked at it ourselves or had other people come to us with that kind of idea. But a lot of times we'll look at a product idea. Our inner circle members, we actually allow them to submit their product ideas to us, and we'll evaluate those ideas. The 3 of us sit down together online here, and we actually go over their idea, and we'll give our honest feedback on that. But a lot of times we've gotten pretty good at it, where within just 10 seconds we can say, nope, not good, or yeah, this looks pretty good. Sometimes it takes longer, but we kind of pride ourselves on continually learning the Amazon marketplace and being able to identify those types of opportunities. So the second video, Leron, why don't you, in the free training series, just came out today, why don't you go through what that's about and why it's the free resource that's pretty cool that we're giving out with that as well?
Yeah, sure. So the second video is all about the niches. We actually say that the riches are in the niches, because, you know, we believe that you don't need to, or that you shouldn't, you know, look at the, you know, number 1 selling toy on Amazon, which if you look right now is the fidget spinner, right? And go out and produce and make that product, because it's going to be too competitive. It's going to be too saturated. The price has gone down, you know, 20-30% over the last few months, right? Where you find the real gems are in the niches, right? In those categories and areas that a lot of other people aren't looking, and that you can develop kind of a niche and brand for yourself on Amazon, and an area that's really, you know, or finding areas that are really have kind of more demand than supply, you know, and then finding that niche and sourcing those products. And we talk about that and teach you how to do that in the second video. One of the things that we've added to it is we've actually developed an extension that we're going to share with you. So this is not something that we built out because we wanted to kind of give this away. This is something that we built for ourselves originally from necessity. We realized that there was kind of a lack in some of the tools in the marketplace, and we wanted to build something that was an extension that we could use right on Amazon to completely improve our keyword research process. And so that extension for, we call it our AutoNator extension is going to be given out to you for free with this video. So you could just download that extension. And so we think that, the content's really valuable, and then that you'll find that tool really valuable to help you in your keyword research and sort of niche finding process.
Awesome. So yeah, to watch both of these videos, you can head over to amazingfreedom.com/training. That's amazingfreedom.com/training. That's where you can check out the first 2 videos that are already out. The second one just came out today. And then the third one will be out in just a couple days from now, and the fourth one not long after that. And if you're listening to this podcast in the future, you can still head over to amazingfreedom.com/training and see if the videos are still available, or get signed up for the next time that they are made available. So I think that's going to do it for today. Thank you, Andy and Liran, for joining me today to talk about diversifying your Amazon business, to take a look at the various ways to make great money on Amazon. Amazon is such a golden opportunity for us to take advantage of. The key here of all of this is just to take advantage of the opportunity in some form, right? No matter how you're selling on Amazon, take advantage of the opportunity that we have. But as you're doing that, be planning long-term for the future of your business, of your lifestyle, and how you really see and want your business to grow going forward. So that's going to do it this time. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode of the Amazon Seller Podcast.
You've been listening to the Amazon Seller Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and join us next time for another look at how to dominate the Amazon marketplace.